Prop HH, county sales tax measures, and general overview of the statewide election in 2024. And we're happy to welcome guests here this evening. And if you like what you see, we hope that you'll join and become a member with us. As a bonus, well, we have a lot of candidates and a lot of electeds here, and I will name them in one momento. As you all take your seats, that'd be great. Thank you. All right, so electeds, please stand and be recognized. We have Kathy Gebhardt from BVSD School Board. Steve Pembroke, Senate President, who's also a speaker this evening. Judy Amabile, House District 49, and candidate for Senate District. I can't remember what Senate District right now. Leslie Smith, CU Regent, or candidate for House District 49. Right. Marta Lotrian, Boulder County Commissioner. Michael Doherty, Boulder District Attorney. And Jennifer Fung in the House, Secretary of State. Our candidates are Patrick Gebhardt for candidate for CU Board of Regents. So, school board, a state school board. Thank you. Right, that's all right. All right, and then Julia Mobile for District 15. Taisha Adams for Boulder City Council. Said Leslie Smith, Peanut Lee for HD10. Terry Burnett for Boulder City Council. My apologies. And Tina Marcos for Boulder City Council. Thank you all for being here. And last but not least, we appreciate this issue campaigns who came here to give you information about their campaigns so you can understand what else is on the ballot besides candidates. Before we get started with the program, I'd like to ask you to join me in a moment of silence to honor those who have been killed, kidnapped, or injured in Israel and Gaza. Thank you. All right, we have a lot of housekeeping items. First of all, ballots have gone out. Make sure you've got yours. If you need to check, you can go to bouldercounty.gov/elections. And you can also sign up there for ballot tracking. It's really nice. We're also selling Nova shirts, $20. It's a steal. And the fundraising money goes to help us put on our projects and our activities and things. So that would be wonderful if you can get one. But they are, this is, typical men's. We have ladies shirts back there. We also had tonight our first engagement table, and it's still back there if you'd like to sign letters to Democrat leaning but infrequent voters in Virginia to encourage them to vote so that we can't remember, but I'm pretty sure it's try to obtain the majority in the Senate of Virginia and hold the House, vice versa, so that Glenn Youngkin doesn't get a free ride. So I want to ask you to help keep DWBC strong by renewing your membership and upgrade to the next support level if you can, so we can grow our support and our engagement everywhere. Dave is in the corner back there that can take your membership and help you get registered again. Back there in the corner. And finally, the Avalon is a very busy place, as you all know from last month. So I would ask that while we're cleaning up at the end of the meeting, if you can move your conversations to the lobby or the parking lot so we can get this done in time to allow the next people to come in. Of course, if you want us to hang out with them and dance, that's up to y'all. Anyway, so now we're here for the program. So I'm proud to introduce our wonderful Secretary of State, Jenna Griswold, and she's going to provide visibility and insight into the 2024 election here in Colorado. Maybe tell us a little bit about that lawsuit against the former guy. And she's a huge inspiration to states around the country who are trying to implement mail-in voting and protect voter integrity. So Jenna, thank you for being here. morning or afternoon. What time is it? 5:37. Oh my God, that's the only mistake I'm gonna make on this election cycle right here. Thank you guys for having me. I live right down the street and have been a proud member of this organization in the past, and I really appreciate all of your guys' support. To do a little historic view from a lot of you guys 6 years ago, running for this seat that no one really cared about or knew what it was. And it really seemed like an impossible race. I was 32. I'd never ran for office before. I was running against the only statewide Republican incumbent that was up for another term for a seat a Democrat hadn't won in 60 years. Yes, 60 years. I see a yes back then. And besides that, folks like me don't tend to run and they don't tend to win statewide office. I grew up in the canyon between Drake, Colorado and Estes Park in a cabin with an outhouse outside on food stamps. So I really appreciate all of your guys' support because we got it done in 2018, and despite some long odds, I became Colorado's first Democratic Secretary of State since Eisenhower was president. I became just, and this is to the heart of your guys' group, the 10th woman ever to serve in statewide executive office since Colorado was a territory. Yeah. Which is bittersweet. We've still not had a woman governor or a woman senator, so we do have to break some big glass ceilings. And I also became the youngest Secretary of State in the nation, which I continue to be today. But more importantly, I got into office and instantly worked to open up access and security of Colorado's elections. We've increased drop boxes by 65%, passed parolee reenfranchisement, worked with the tribes, and saw a 20% increase in tribal voting. We passed automatic voter registration, which has registered since it was implemented in 2020 more than 450,000 new voters. Then in 2020, like mentioned, the nation was gearing up for round one of the most important election in our lifetime. And then the pandemic hit. And suddenly the right to vote was under threat and democracy was at risk. My office got to work. We expanded statewide ballot tracking. So could see with their own eyes, the lies about vote by mail, they're lies. You can see your mail sent to you to when it is counted. We rolled out text to cure to make it easier for younger people to have their voice heard. We also assisted states across the country to expand access to vote by mail. It mattered. Democracy survived. We hung on by a thread. The vote differential for the Electoral College between Joe Biden winning and Trump winning was 44,000 votes. And we were there to make sure Americans could have their voices heard. Democracy endured. Donald Trump lost. It then faced the next risk, the insurrection. We got through the insurrection, January of 2021, the fake elector scheme, their whole attempt to steal the presidency from the American people. To just enter 2022 and then see election deniers running for Secretary of State, the chief election officer position, in almost every battleground state in the nation. And I was so proud to lead the charge to stop those guys. Mostly guys, a couple of gals. We beat election deniers. As the chair of the Democratic Association of Secretaries of State, we led the charge to stop election deniers, and we stopped them in Michigan, in Wisconsin, in Minnesota, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada. Presidential election, having people in battleground states who are supposed to protect the right to vote when they don't even believe in it. American voters should choose the president, not some crooked politicians. So democracy won again. But you all know that the fight for fundamental freedoms have not stopped. We are seeing from corrupt justices on the Supreme Court
to extremist governors like DeSantis, who seem hell-bent on attacking some Americans to score political points. We've seen the widespread rolling back of so many of the freedoms that we fought for, and we can't be silent. You all know that right now in this country, women are second-class citizens. There's extremist elected officials who don't even know what a uterus is or where it's located, deciding to tell women, even women who want to have a pregnancy, who want to have a baby, go bleed out in the parking lot until your life is at complete risk before a doctor can give you life-saving care. They then go after the doctor. They go after the family, the husband who drives that woman to the hospital. We cannot stand by and allow extremists to take us back decades and ruin families across this country. So you've been front and center to gun violence. Can you imagine in the United States of America, a country of freedom, of the American dream, parents are afraid to send their kids to school, that we've decided that we will sacrifice second graders for some perverse interpretation of the Second Amendment? We need an assault weapon ban immediately. We can get that done in the state of Colorado, and there's so many people who say, just wait for DC. Well, Trent, when does DC ever get anything done? It's time to get it done here. And when it comes to the climate crisis, again, you know, I grew up in Estes Park. I lived down the road in Louisville. Half the town burnt down. I know what you guys have gone through in Boulder. We're seeing the climate crisis up front and personal, and we need immediate action. And Colorado has taken some big strides forward, but we should be the #1 state for a clean energy economy. And we should couple that with good union paying jobs. So I'm just so honored to be here with you guys. I think, you know, as a state and a nation, we are moving in the right direction. We stopped extremists in 2018. We stopped extremists in 2020. We stopped extremists in 2022. But there are some big pressing issues, from democracy to women to making sure there's clean air and water, that we have to continue to focus on. And I hope you guys know, as long as I'm in elected office, I'll be there, making sure that families can send their kids to school, making sure that women feel safe traveling out of state, and making sure that we have a Colorado we can really believe in. So I really appreciate you guys. Thank you for having me. Say, can I have a PSA announcement, Lisa, with your shirt? Okay, last thing you'll hear from me, besides your ballots will be coming this week. They're already here? Okay, perfect. You have a quick county clerk and quick postal service. Okay, are you guys getting ready for Halloween? Anybody buying candy, having a Halloween party? So there's, I heard there's a way to make your Halloween party super spooky, or your get together. You just close your eyes and say, Beetlejuice, 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 and Lauren Boebert will appear. All right, I love that. Or Beetlebird, Beetlebird, Beetlebird. So moving along, thank you so much, Secretary Griswold. We'd like to now bring up our County Commissioner, Marta Loachman. And she's going to give us the background on the tax measures for the county. And she's been serving us with distinction for 3 years now. So thank you, Marta.
Buenas tardes. My name is Martha Loachman. I'm one of your county commissioners, and I am here to, that was such an invigorating and inspirational conversation, and I thank you for that. And now I'm gonna be the person with the data and the facts and the ask. So that's a great spot to be in. Just want to, I appreciate the time, and what I want to do this evening is just share with you in hopefully 10 minutes or less. Information about the Boulder County ballot measures that you will see. Some of you already got your ballot. I need to go to the post office. And grab mine. So there are 3 that are out there, and the first one I'm going to talk about before we get into the slides, because it's very minimal information and was very active Democratic folks in the room. People may ask you. The first one is only specific to Netherlands residents, and it's an extension of a current tax for the Eco Pass. So it's just an extension of what Netherlands residents already use. And the difference is that it will give Netherlands businesses the opportunity and the option to use that same Eco Pass structure to make it affordable, so that we're not just focused on residents, but also workers in an attempt to, Jen was just talking about the climate crisis, in an attempt to really open up transit and transportation opportunities. So just in case people ask you, because not all Boulder County voters will see that on your ballots. So we'll jump into the first measure that everybody will see as far as Boulder County voters. And this one is County 1A. Commissioner Ashley Stolzman is the lead on this one. So we need signs, they want to endorse, they want help on letter to contact Ashley. This is an extension. So again, the good news that I can bring you is that none of these 3 measures are new taxes. They are all extensions of current sales and use taxes. So this one that I'm talking about, as many of you know, Boulder County voters are committed and aligned with the values of open space. And we actually have 4 different open space taxes. So this is just one of them, would sunset in 24. So this is an extension of the 0.05%. And this is just a map, because sometimes it helps to have that visual. Why would we extend this tax? You can see up on here, and I would encourage folks to get on the bouldercounty.gov website. If you have any questions or just want to get a little more information, or just respond to your friends that are asking you at the ballot parties and in your newsletters. And so what all of that, that's totally fine. You can take a look at that map later, because it's so far away that the piece there that you probably walk away from is there are still some spaces in there you can see that aren't green or a shade of green, which just means that there's still opportunity for contiguous space in regards to action. And here's what the open space program really includes. And I can see the screen over there has moved forward, but it hasn't yet up here. And it did a minute ago. So I'll keep talking about it. So here's what we're talking about is the goals of Boulder County in regards to open space that are talking about all the things we love, enjoy, and hopefully folks are making time for their own mental health, for their neighbors and their friends, and certainly the visitors to go look at our wildlife habitat. We do have and continue to support passive recreation. And I say that because we are, as a county, not cities and municipalities that have parks and some of those other pieces. But we do support passive recreation. We do support accessibility. The East Boulder County management plan is in the works. There's an opportunity for input. If you haven't provided your thoughts on that one, we'll be going to POSAC soon before it's seen at the Boulder County Commissioners. Because that's an opportunity, and this is an example of all of these different pieces in one parcel of land. Agricultural, we have about 25,000 acres of agricultural land that we work on with our agricultural tenants. Of course, urban buffers, and who doesn't appreciate the scenic corridors? When you drive through, when you get on your bus through, when you wheel around or walk around, and then you go to another county, one of our neighbors, I won't say which neighbor, you can see the difference. Someone else in the room, of course, in a room of dim women. But it makes a difference, and this is why the acquisition and the maintenance is still so important. So the priority land is exactly what I was just talking about. And this is again 0.05%. So in the question about how much more or less is that, we're talking about around $4 million, just to give you an idea of what this particular tax generates. I talked a little bit about the agricultural land, but in total, we're talking about 116,000 acres of open space land that's divvied up in those portions that I already shared with you. We had an opportunity to meet with our volunteers, our open space volunteers, about 2 weeks ago out on one of our properties, actually on the East Boulder parcel that's being under review right now. And there are about 850 volunteers this year that volunteer on open space projects for all the different pieces that you see here and that I was talking about. That's an equivalent of 8 full-time employees, of people who love, who work, who want to be part of seed picking, of restoration, of weed management, of all the different programs, including some of the wildlife watches that happen in managing land. And so that is just a quick some information on the slide that I don't have to read all the pieces to you. In an effort to keep under 10 minutes as I committed. So that was 1A. And then the other one that all Boulder County voters will see, again, an extension of a current sales use tax with the title of 1B, and you'll see it as affordable housing. This one, I'm leading this particular measure, and then Anne Marie Jensen, who is back in the back. Thank you, Anne Marie, is the campaign chair. So if you want information, you want to know how you can volunteer, you're interested in letter to editor, etc. See Anne Marie before you take off this afternoon. This is an extension of a 0.185% tax. I'm going to give you a teeny bit of history about this tax, because again, it is already a current sales and use tax that Boulder County folks are paying. It originally came from the previous Board of County Commissioners to Boulder County voters in 2014 was a tax measure for flood recovery funding. It was at that time a 5-year measure. And in 2018, the board at that time went back to voters and asked to reallocate that funding into this alternative sentencing facility. That current tax measure at the same amount is, we just had a groundbreaking, and my colleague, DA Doherty, was there as well on the groundbreaking a few months ago this year of that facility. This particular measure will sunset in December 24. But we have the capital funds through that tax measure and looking at the budget from that that will end in 2024. So now we're going to voters and saying, here's what we know. And this is a snapshot again on the bouldercounty.gov website. I would encourage folks, because again, people are going to be asking you, how should I vote? What should I do here? There is una hoja en español que está en el sitio de web, and there's same one pager in English on the Boulder County website to the snapshot, some of the data points, etc. The key on this one, without reading, because I believe everybody in the room knows somebody who is struggling with housing costs in Boulder County. The other piece of it that folks may not know is 65% of our workers in Boulder County drive in single occupancy vehicles to get to work. So not only do we have an issue of mental health, do we have an issue of just stability for individuals and families, but we also have an addition here to our greenhouse gas emissions and the climate crisis that we have created here. And so when we have gone through and done survey, we do a public opinion polling. Historically, the commissioners have done that. And the folks that have responded to that, as we continue looking at measures annually and options in regards to tax housing, as you can see on here, it's the top pink on the graph, 25%. That folks have responded, and this is the most recent polling, that the affordability of housing in Boulder County is their primary concern. And so when we're looking at this data, when we're out doing surveys, when we're out talking to folks in town halls, in public comment, we continue to hear these questions in different ways. And so it was an opportunity for us as this new board in 2022-23. What is the role that the county can play? What can we do to help our jurisdictional partners, our municipal partners? I love that, thank you. To make sure that we are responding to community needs. And so we know there's a need. We have surveyed folks, and what you may not be able to see from a local standpoint, and this is one of my favorite things about this job, HPA stands for Regional Housing Partnership. We have a group of folks from all of our jurisdictional partners who are very in tune and have been doing this work. We spent $1 million of American Rescue Plan Act funding last year to get the Regional Housing Partnership back together and really reinvigorate that. And I say that because the study that they did in 2018 on this same topic showed at that time that there were 7,400 units of affordable housing in Boulder County. At that time, they determined that they needed 18,000 units. And then that would cost $25 million a year to get us there. So we've already done the surveys, we've already done studies, we have partners who are in line with this work. And so the question now in this last slide is, what is the funding gonna go to? Again, not a new sales tax, it's a current 0.185%, and Boulder County voters have a chance to create the first sustainable funding for affordable and affordable housing, and it'll go into these three buckets. One is develop, just as construction cost, permitting, zoning. Anybody who's in that industry knows what that. The second one is affordable and attainable housing, which can be rental, it can be home ownership, it might be mobile home, resident-owned communities called ROP. And housing support services, which looks like eviction prevention, it looks like landlord-tenant mediation, it looks like home ownership counseling, that are services that all the counties are in. So that is quickest summary with 3 different ballot measures. I appreciate all of the time. I appreciate the interest, and get a hold of me. Certainly use the website, grab Anne-Marie before you leave as well. And we appreciate your support and inquiry about what these ballot measures can do for Boulder County residents.
All right, thank you, Marta. I will be checking out the website because even though it's really large on the screen, I still can't see it. So now I get to introduce Carrie Kennedy, advisor to Governor Polis and Senator Fenberg, President of the Senate, to come explain to us about HH on how we should vote.
Hello, Boulder County Democrats.
We're gonna have a little fireside chat.
It's great to be back to see all of you. It's been many years since I've been on the stage, and nice to see some old friendly faces. Thanks for all the work that you all do. Great to be here with President Fenberg. He's the sponsor of the legislation that referred Proposition HH to the ballot. So if you have questions, you've got the right people in front of you to answer them tonight. I'll give a quick summary overview of Proposition HH, and then we'll open it up for questions. I've been crisscrossing Colorado for over 25 years, trying to improve funding for our public schools. And that hurt. It's been a long road, but that road right here to you tonight on this stage. Proposition HH is a wonderful opportunity for Colorado to avoid what is otherwise going to be a really big increase in everyone's property tax bills, but to do it in a way that protects funding for the local governments and the local services that rely on property taxes, and particularly for our public schools, that will reap the full benefit of all that value growth we're seeing across the state, to be able to increase the revenue and increase their funding, but not pass that increase on to our property owners. You got your valuation in the mail, and here in Boulder County, I'm guessing most of you saw your home value go up 40%, 50%, maybe even more. That's in part because of the COVID pandemic. It is also because of a housing shortage here in our state. But if we were to do nothing, because your property tax bill is a percentage of the value of your home, you could see your property tax bill go up by as much as 40 or 50 or 60%. And in fact, we're looking statewide at the average homeowner's property tax going up by about $1,000. And for an awful lot of families in our state, they just can't afford that kind of an increase in their property taxes. For folks who are renters and don't own that home, landlords, when taxes go up, they pass those taxes through to their renters in the form of higher rent. So this big increase in people's tax bills, this increase in rent, is just going to aggravate the crisis we already have in this state around housing affordability. It is going to make housing more unaffordable. Proposition HH would cut those increases in half for the average homeowner. So you avoid that big increase. Renters won't see that big increase get passed through. Seniors get the same benefit as everybody else. They avoid those big increases in their bill this year. But there's an added benefit in Proposition HH for seniors, which would enable seniors who move to continue to claim the senior homestead exemption. Right now, people are clapping, they know what this is. If you're over 65 or you're an active military or veteran, you get to deduct up to $100,000 of value off your home before applying your local taxes. And that's a great savings, property tax savings for our seniors. But in Colorado law today, you have to have lived in your house for 10 years to get it. And so if a senior moves, they downsize, and they haven't been in their new home for 10 years, then they lose that exemption. So we got a lot of seniors who don't want to downsize, because if they buy a place, even if it's smaller or less expensive, their tax bill is going to go up. Well, that's not. And Prop HH fixes that. The way Proposition HH cuts the property tax for homeowners is a couple different ways. It lowers the assessment rate. That's the portion of the value of the property that gets taxed. But it also allows everyone to take the first $50,000 of value of your home and exempt it from tax. That is a progressive way of providing property tax relief. For the first time ever, we're going to make our property tax structure more progressive, because removing $50,000 in value from your taxable value is a much bigger benefit to somebody who's in a $300,000 or $400,000 home than to somebody who's in a $3 million or a $4 million home. And importantly, that exemption will only be available to primary owner-occupied homes. You got to live in your home to get it. You don't get it on your second home or your third home. You don't get it on your ski house. Businesses also will see property tax relief under Proposition HH after 40 years of the Gallagher Amendment in our Constitution. Property tax rates on businesses in Colorado are just flat out high. They are higher than the national average. And for a lot of small businesses that are trying to compete with online retailers, the property tax burden they are facing is extremely burdensome, and in many cases, forcing them to close or making them less competitive. Proposition HH provides, for the first time in 40 years, property tax reductions for businesses. Proposition HH is going to protect you from rising property taxes in the future. It puts in place a cap on the growth of property tax collections for all taxing districts in the state. Now, you've heard this before, right? Wait a minute. If you put a cap on the growth of collections, how's that going to affect all my local governments? Proposition HH has a cap on collections that's referred to as participatory taxation or truth in taxation. It is a cap. However, it allows the local elected governing body of the districts to have a conversation with you all, with the property owners of the community, hold a public hearing, provide notice to property owners if they want to keep revenue generated off of growth and values in the district. They can't raise rates, but if they want to keep revenue over that cap, they can vote to do so after holding a public hearing and noticing all the property owners in the district. So it provides complete local control for local elected officials to make sure they're able to address local community needs. It's called representative democracy. Remember that? So ongoing protections for property owners, but making sure local communities can meet their needs. It's a best practice from around the country, and it is part of Proposition HH. Now, here's the really exciting Proposition HH and what makes it different from other measures that are being proposed around property taxes here in Colorado and around the country. Proposition HH fills, it replaces the money that your local governments are going to lose. So when we lower those rates, you save money as homeowners out there, you save money as businesses. It means your fire district and your water district and your library district and your school district would collect less revenue. But Proposition HH fills that money. It captures a portion of the state Tabor surplus and dedicates that money directly to local governments. Yay, clap. Yeah. Yeah. That's what gives me the ability to stand up here and say, this is great. It's property tax relief for all you homeowners out there. But your school district is actually going to get an increase in its revenue as if it were capturing all the revenue off all that growth. They get the benefit of the growth, but it's not being passed on to you all, the property owners. So how do we do that? We actually raise the state Tabor limit by 1% a year. Right now, the state on revenue under the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights, it limits the state's revenue growth to inflation, plus the growth in state population. And Proposition HH would add 1% each year. That revenue is what would go to all of the local governments to backfill these lost property taxes. Now, you're going to hear opponents say, that's going to take away your refunds. Remember last year, we all got $750? Awesome. It does not take away your refunds. In fact, it maintains the constitutional guarantee that when revenues grow in excess of the cap, everybody's still going to get refunds. So under Prop HH, notwithstanding what our opponents are saying, with Proposition HH, we're all going to get $800 this year. If HH passes, 830, is that right, President Venberg? 832? 833, go $105. 833. In the following year, your refund is going to be hundreds of dollars, depends on how the revenues to the state grow, but Prop HH would reduce it by $46. That's the money that would then be distributed out to your local governments, your school districts to backfill these huge property tax savings. So for the average homeowner in the state, they're going to see $500 or $600 in savings on their property taxes and still get an $800 Tabor refund check. And the following year, they're going to see $500 or $600 in savings on their property taxes, and their Tabor refund check will only be reduced by $46. So if the economy grows into the future, you're going to get large Tabor refunds. If the economy goes into a recession, you wouldn't have gotten Tabor refunds even under current law. Your refunds in the future will be a little bit smaller, but largely and completely outweighed by the very large amount of property tax savings that people are going to get. Let me just quick touch base on Phil, because Tina said, oh, this group, they care about backfill, so they're going to want to know what's going on here. Schools get 100% backfilled every year going forward. So statewide, let's just look at Boulder Valley. Your school district assessed values in the district, the taxable value in the district would go up 35% this cycle, this 2023, without Prop HH, and it's going up 31% with Prop HH. So it gives you a sense of still a huge increase. Prop HH does even backfill that difference. So you're still looking at a $122 million increase in the Boulder Valley School District in their budgets because of the growth in values statewide. Boulder County is up about 36%, and with Prop HH still going to see a 32% increase in revenues. And I know there are going to be questions. I've got some info on library districts and whatnot if you want it. But what's very important is that Prop HH preserves a big increase and provides savings that are targeted towards homes of lesser value, all homes get relief, but most of that savings is gonna benefit homes who are in the $200,000 to $500,000 range that need it the most, where they are able to subtract that $50,000. And your local governments will be able to get backfilled. Other than school districts, other local governments will get backfilled from the state until they get to 20% growth. So we guarantee all your local governments are gonna see 20% growth. And then the state backfill is gonna taper off. Unless you're a school district, you're always gonna get that backfill, and unless you're a fire district, hospital district, or health district, you're gonna continue to get backfilled, even if you've grown by more than 20%, even if your revenues have grown by more than 20%. So it's very generous. It ensures all of our local governments are well taken care of and ensures that property owners around the state are able to get the relief that they need. And that in going forward, that the control over property taxes is left at the local level. I'm gonna stop there and see if Steve has anything to add.
Well. Everybody understands everything about Proposition HH, right? It's very, very simple. I think Carrie covered all of the main points. And I'm sure there are questions, so if we have time, we are more than happy to take questions, because there always are on this topic. But just to summarize, I mean, at the end of the day, this is property tax relief, because let's face it, even if you're a Democrat, even if you're a hardcore Democrat, you still probably don't want a 40% tax hike, right? And so it is egregious for people that are incomes, for seniors, for the impacted all have users. It is not something that a lot of people are able to stomach. For some folks that have a well-paying job, they're looking at the property value and they're saying, well, that's great. I'm getting hundreds of thousands of dollars. I did very little. But for people that are truly living paycheck to paycheck, for fixed income individuals, that's something that they actually can't afford and will force people out of their homes. That's what this is going after, is to stop that crisis from happening. But as Carrie said, it also does many other things that I think everybody in this room generally would support. It makes property taxes more progressive, because it provides more of a proportional benefit to people that are lower income. Actually, I don't know if you mentioned the renter piece, but it even sets aside $20 million every year through low income rental assistance for folks across the state. So it does all this. It provides this relief. It's $1 to $1.6 billion in tax relief every year for the next 10 years. That's how long HH is in effect. But it also makes sure that our local community services are not harmed, and in fact, actually increases funding, the projections show, for public education by billions of dollars. So this is for a lot of people, they say, how can this possibly add up? How can we have our cake and eat it too in such a way that you're describing? It's because our economy is doing very well. Frankly, that is why there is money in these tapered surpluses. We're way over the cap these days. And clearly our state has huge needs. We all know that we've been underfunding public education in Colorado for more than a generation. This finally is not going to solve all of our problems. We're not going to say that. But this gets us closer to actually being average across the country, because we're below average right now. We have been for a long time. This gets us to actually meeting the promises that we made when voters passed Amendment 23, which Carrie was the architect of. This gets us to a place that provides relief, provides a more progressive tax system, reforms Tabor, and helps us significantly increase funding for public education. That's what Proposition HH is. So we would love to take questions. I'm sure there are some. And we also are happy to chat offline, or if folks have questions afterwards, and email us. We're happy to. Please go to the website. It's yesonhh.org. And we have some flyers over there with some of the basic information. Please take some. But in the meantime, for however much time we have left, let's answer some questions. Right in front, the overachiever Tina Mew.
Do you want me to give you a?
Oh, sure. Thank you.
Thank you. So I have a question about the order of operations, about the rental assistance and the school education fund. So I understand that backfill happens first, great. And then, I think, and then, over and above that, there's rental assistance and then, a deposit into the state education fund. So can you talk about which comes first, how that's decided, the mechanism of it?
You got it.
So rental first and then state education fund.
Backfill and then $20 million, up to $20 million for rental assistance, and then the rest of the retained revenue goes into the state education fund for school districts to backfill. And make that 100% commitment every single year.
Okay, in that order. Thank you very much.
Other questions?
I guess the thing I was curious about is, am I hearing Governor Paul's right that he wants to cut income taxes? And how does that fit in with this?
What was the last part?
And how does that fit in with HR?
Yeah, okay, so. This is a question that comes up every once in a while when we talk about taxes and Governor Polis and Democrats. Because it's confusing, right? It's like, wait, you're asking me to approve a tax cut and you're a Democrat? And then also, what is this thing I heard Governor Polis say the other day? And it's all very confusing. Here's the deal, the thing on income taxes is completely separate from Proposition HH. It is something I think he said on a stage a year, 2 years ago, probably made Carrie's head explode, but she's not allowed to say that herself. But I think, and of course I can't speak for Governor Polis, and Carrie works for Governor Polis, but today she is on her own time, so she's not speaking for Governor Polis today either. If I were to describe what he meant, it is that in theory, he probably thinks that the income tax is a poor way to raise revenue and would prefer to replace it with things like a carbon tax. Is that a real policy prescription that he's proposing? Absolutely not. I think it's an academic discussion. And generally speaking, he would prefer different ways to raise revenue than income tax. That's an ideological debate that we can probably have for months and still not come to consensus. But that's where he's at. He generally on the Democratic side has been much more on the side of lowering taxes than I think the majority of elected officials in the party. So that is true. Again, I don't think that he is proposing any policy in the near term about abolishing the income tax, even if he would personally support that.
I'll just also add, in the past, when he supported cuts in income tax, he's always identified replacement revenue. He's not supportive of cutting the revenue to public services. But as President Fenberg identified, the governor would very much like to tax things that we want to discourage, like emissions, pollution. He would love to use that as leverage to accomplish environmental goals, as opposed to taxing something we do like, which is productivity and work. So it is a philosophical debate, but I would hope, and I think the governor would like to see us evolve in finding ways to be able to tax emissions and pollution to accomplish environmental objectives. That's when you hear the governor talk about replacing the income tax with a carbon tax or a pollution tax, that's what he's referring to.
I was listening to TV on Channel 9, Marshall Zellinger gave his view of Proposition H. They have a lot of viewers, and he says, I'm so confused, which leads to a no vote. How are you counteracting it?
Well, it is confusing. I don't think Marshall's actually confused, if I remember, I guess. He says he is, because maybe it looks for good TV. But there is a robust campaign. We're up on TV now. We're going to be in people's mailboxes. We're doing texting. We're doing all of the above. We have not I think every major newspaper endorsement so far. So the Daily Camera, Boulder Weekly, for locally, the Denver Post endorsed, the Grand Junction Sentinel, the Aurora Sentinel. So at the end of the day, it is complicated. The reason why it's complicated is because we want to make sure it's done in a way that's responsible and backfills all of these local districts. That is complicated. It just is, because it's formulaic and every community is different, and you're talking about, fiscal policy in the first place. So it is complicated. We are trying to cut through, the noise and just simply explain it to people in real terms. This will cut your property tax bill, because everyone's eye just popped out of their head when I got nurses. This cuts that on average in half. Property taxes are still going to go up because property values have gone up. We can't really do much about that other than different policies like build more housing or whatever it is, right? But property taxes are going up, property values are going up. We are gonna blunt that impact on people and do it in a way that's responsible to make sure that our schools and fire districts and library district things are out. It's the top line message. Once you start talking about the formulas for backfill and this and that, it does get very complicated. But we need to cut through that and explain to people. The other thing is the opposition is misinforming, and I would say lying to voters like it's their job, because it literally is their job. And somebody, when I was walking in, I think you're right there, showed me a mailer he got that was from, on the envelope, the state of Colorado. And they invented us a logo for the state. You open it up and it's from the desk of Lisa Frizzell, which is I'm sure she's a wonderful woman. I've never spoken to her. She's a state representative in the House, very far right. And it's an official looking letter about how horrible HH is. Most of the things in there aren't even true, but they have a very robust misleading misinformation campaign going on. And so we do have to do extra work to push back. I think the endorsements of every major newspaper helps. I think people trust them as a trusted source. But we need your help. We need all of you to vote yes. We need to run up the scoreboard in places like Boulder County. And we need you to spread the word that this is responsible. This is not only going to help you in your pocketbook, but it's going to help our schools. And really help us get that message out there.
We actually have a question from a Zoom participant, John Petra. He says, I believe the IRS has not issued a final ruling on this subject. If the IRS decides to tax TABOR refunds in Colorado, wouldn't we be better off getting property tax relief and smaller TABOR refunds?
So there's the last couple of years, the IRS has come out with this guidance that they're going to tax our TABOR refunds, and then frankly, the governor probably makes an angry phone call, and then they're like, well, we're still deciding. I don't think there's been a final determination on if TABOR refunds are taxable. But it is a good point, and I'll pass it off to Carrie. Keep in mind the reduction in TABOR refunds is not guaranteed, because TABOR refunds aren't guaranteed in the first place. It depends on how the economy is performing. So in the last 10 years, I think half of the years we didn't even have a TABOR refund. It's only recently that we have a TABOR refund that's like $700, where like people notice. People never really noticed it in the past. It was $40, $30, or whatever. But the tax cuts are guaranteed. It's not like, depending on the economy, you may get the property tax cut in HH. You will get that for the whole 10-year period. The guarantee, we can't legally raise those back up. But the impact to your TABOR refund is really at the whim of the economy. Depends how the economy is doing. So I wanted to make that point. I don't know if we made it previously, but if there's something you want to add about that.
Any other questions? Oh, 1 minute.
This is a follow-on, I think a little bit, we've talked a lot about the TABOR surplus and how the surplus is going to backfill the funds that the local governments were not receiving from the property taxes that have been lowered. And what happens in those years that the economy doesn't generate a surplus, because that may happen too. That could And I think it speaks, you spoke to that partially in the response to the last question, but could you tell us a little bit more about if we have a 5-year recession, there's no chamber surplus, we're guaranteed to cut property taxes. So what happens then?
Yeah, that's a really good question, Kathy. And the answer is it's not one for one. And that's probably partially because we can't project exactly what the impacts are going to be. But that's why the leftover money after we backfill all the districts for that year, and then do the money for rental assistance, the excess money, if there is any, that is collected from this 1%, that we're adding to the Tabor formula, goes into the state ed fund. And it can then be used for future years to make sure we have enough funding to do backfill for everybody, even in bad years. So the projections show, the economists, and nobody actually knows what the economy is going to be 5 years from now, but there is consensus amongst a lot of really smart people that have studied this, but we are going to have enough funding to do backfill for the whole time that HH requires us to do backfill. And because we are lifting the cap, but in the years, if there are years where we don't have enough money coming in that particular fiscal year to do that fiscal year's backfill, there will be excess money in this bank account, the state ed fund, that can be used for that. So it's a little bit of a rainy day fund to ensure that during this period of time for HH, we have enough funding for backfill. And the projections show we're gonna have more money than backfill, and that's why there's such a hopefully an increase in state education funding.
Yeah, I think the only thing I would add also is if we go into a recession, if we see your property values dropping, that's when folks are really gonna need these rate reductions on the property taxes. And they will be in place every year for at least a decade. And the legislation allows the choirs, the General Assembly, to review this policy 10 years from now. And Kathy will see how it's worked. Has the backfill been sufficient? Have the increased revenues at the local level benefited communities? Has the property tax relief, keeping Colorado's property taxes low, provided broad benefits in communities? And they get to look at it in 10 years and go, hey, did this work? Was it a good decision? Was using some of the surplus to backfill these local governments? Was it a beneficial policy for the state? And they can decide to continue the policy after that 10th year, but they can only do it if they leave the property tax reductions in place and leave the backfill in place. They can't do the property tax reductions without the backfill. So we're protected into the future. Yes.
So I'm gonna, if there's still time, we're happy to take more questions, but I want to make sure we get one point across very clearly, because we've been talking about all the technical aspects of HH. So we started by talking about we're living in this moment where we're having these astronomical property value increases that have hit. We're sort of living in this perfect storm because Gallagher was removed and we had pandemic, surge pricing on homes, and there's a shortage in Colorado compared to how many people are living here and trying to move here. So values have skyrocketed. I mean, I don't think we're gonna have 40% value increases year after year. This is like a perfect storm that is really harmful to a lot of people. That's why this is so important to do now. And that's why this is temporary. This is only 10 years. Because in a lot of ways, we don't know what the world's going to be in 10 years. We don't know what our housing situation is going to be in 10 years, for sure. And this is really to help us get through this period in time, but not have our schools and other districts suffer the relief that we're providing people. But there's an alternative outcome that the opposition has been working to get on the ballot. And some of you maybe have even signed their petition because there's rumors there in front of all Whole Foods and King Seekers, whatever, for a month or so. And they are going to put something on the ballot. They've gotten the signatures. It has been certified by the Secretary of State's office already. So it will be on the 2024 ballot. What it is something that they essentially took from California, which there it's called Prop 13. It's a Colorado flavor of Prop 13. What it is a 4% hard constitutional cap on property tax growth. And this is statewide, it's constitutional. The last time we put something about property taxes in the Constitution, lasted for what, 40 years? So it's not easy to take these things out of the Constitution once they're in there, especially when people believe that it's keeping their taxes low. That's headed to the ballot in 2024. And that is why the opposition is working so hard to beat HH, because they know people are pissed off about their property taxes and they don't want HH to be the solution because they have their own solution, which really is an ideological play by them, I think, to dismantle so many of the things we all care about, to keep government to essentially be cut to the bone and providing services. I think it would all but guarantee Colorado is one of the worst states in the country in per pupil funding. Because if you think about it, if school districts can't grow by more than, it's actually 2% a year, because it's 4% over an assessment period, which is 2 years. So if they can't grow more than 2% a year, that means they can't keep up with inflation in a lot of years. It means when there's a good year, they can't even make up for the bad years because they can't grow by 2% in the good years. And so what it means, people's property values will keep going up, but all of our government services will never be able to keep up with the costs.
I'll also add, and why I highlighted the participatory taxation cap, the cap that is in Prop HH, preserves the authority of your local governing bodies to have community input and to vote as a governing body to keep revenue generated off natural growth in values if they have community needs. That's in contrast to what President Benberg is talking about with Initiative 50, which is a statewide hard constitutional cap. It is worse than Tabor because it has no local override. You all at the local level could vote to de-Bruce, you could vote to waive the Tabor cap. You don't get to do that with this one. They're coming in and saying it is a hard statewide cap. Michael Fields, the proponent, testified at his hearing that any local community that wants to go for a bond election, you need to build a new school, you need to build affordable housing. If that were to push the state over the cap in that year, it has to go to a statewide vote. So Prop HH is critically important because it sets Colorado up for the future with a property tax structure that keeps property taxes locally controlled, that puts in protections for property owners, that avoids this huge increase people are going to see in their bill, that really creates a challenge, a political challenge, with what we've seen in other countries, a taxpayer revolt. People are not going to be happy if they see this. So Prop HH avoids that big increase. And all of this sets us up so that our schools and the local governments that we rely upon are going to benefit from the growth that we're seeing statewide. So we need your help to pass Prop HH. I appreciate everybody's question.
Along those lines, do you guys have yard signs yet, or how will we be able to get those?
So there's a saying, if you've worked on campaigns, it's that yard signs. So we didn't spend any money on yard signs. We're spending money on direct voter communication. It's a statewide measure, so there's no way we don't have human power to get yard signs out there to make a real difference. So we're spending all of our money on direct communications, and we're lean. We are going to be up, and we really need to go through. So we need people to really dig in and understand what this measure does and vote for it. So we don't have a yard sign for you today, but we still need you to vote yes. And please do go to the website. You can make a contribution on the website. You can just learn more. You can access our ads and our videos. share information, please do take one of our link pieces that are here that provides a little bit of the information. We have another question?
Yeah, so on the question of getting people to vote for it, I have a particular, I'd like to hear from you how you would recommend selling something to, well, let me give you my situation. So I'm a renter in a senior apartment complex in Lafayette. And it's rent controlled in the sense that, there's, income limits on how much money you can earn in order to live there. And then every year your rent can go up only so much. I think it's probably based on the area median income and some other things that I don't know how they figured that out, but so as a renter, I'm in that situation and it's senior housing, so it's, older folks, obviously. But at any rate, so I'm not likely to have, because of that structure, my landlord isn't going to be able to pass on property value increases. So that argument as a renter isn't gonna, that's gonna make it's not gonna carry any weight when I'm trying to tell my neighbors why they should support property change. What should I be telling them? I mean, other than the philosophical and long-term, all those details and everything that you've already talked about, but in kind of a nutshell, as a renter, when they're not likely to have a direct impact one way or the other, what would you recommend?
Yeah, I'd have to, the specifics of your lease, and what's allowed, but if what you're saying is. Your rent is capped at a percentage of income, and so it can't go up, even if. The property taxes or the property value goes up, that's a contractual requirement. It's not, generally the case. Generally, you see landlords pass increases directly through to renters. So there wouldn't be a direct benefit. On the property tax relief in your particular case. Yeah, I would have to take a look at your lease, but I think if you're talking to your neighbors, you can talk about the broad benefits to the schools and the fire districts and the library districts and your local government, and ensuring that we have a property tax structure in Colorado that ensures that those local community services have the funding they need. Because quite frankly, a lot of folks that are living in affordable housing, seniors in affordable housing, they rely on, we all do, right? Rely on the local public health clinic, the local hospital, the local library, the local fire and police protection. And we would never want a measure like what is being proposed in 2024 by the opponents to come in and just rip out the ability of those local service providers to be able to do their jobs and to benefit the community. And I think if you're talking to your neighbors, you can continue to say, don't listen to the nonsense you're hearing from the opponents, that people will continue to get Tabor refunds as long as the state's economy is growing.
Yeah. Do you guys remember referendum CC?
Yeah.
It's just a couple of years ago, so not Ref C, Ref CC, which Casey Becker, I'm sure, was on this stage talking about is some point, or maybe it was with the Avalon back then, but what did Ref CC do? It got rid of Tabor refunds. That's literally what it did. So all the things the opposition was saying about HH, CC actually, the entire purpose was to get rid of Tabor refunds to reinvest that money into things that we all care about, like schools. It didn't pass. This doesn't get rid of Tabor refunds. It reduces them some in some years and gives you a property tax cut. It funds our schools and does all these other things. So in some ways, for me, when someone is skeptical of HH and they're asking all these questions about all the technical aspects, I often will be like, did you vote for CC? Almost always like, I don't actually believe Tabor's good policy. And I say, well, you really should like this one, because this isn't, you still get your Tabor check. And it does all these other things like providing property tax relief. And I think once people realize that, I think this is actually a very reasonable proposal. It's not simple, and that's what's working against us. But it's not simple because we are trying to make sure that it's as responsible as possible.
One more question. Now, my question is, why don't we stop letting these people screw up our constitution? I lived in New York for a few years, and I found out once, I said, how do we get something changed on the constitution? The person looked at me and said, you have to call the state constitutional convention, so please put that in place, so we don't have this anymore. Change the constitution, they destroy a lot of things.
Well,
And you can't go rid of it.
I agree, Pat, and you know how we would do that? We have to change the Constitution.
You know, when Governor Polis was early on in the conversations on what we were gonna replace the Gallagher Amendment with, because there's been a lot of cost, what are we gonna replace the Gallagher Amendment with? And I've talked a lot about the participatory taxation cap in Prop HH that is the proposal here to replace the Gallagher Amendment, but when we first started this conversation, the governor said, well, I can tell you what, we are not going to replace it with something worse than the Gallagher Amendment, and we're not going into the Constitution.
Any other questions? Okay. Thank you both very much for all the information. Would you say one more time the website? Yes, on hh.org to find more information.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, thank you all for coming this evening. Thank you to our speakers, Secretary Griswold, Commissioner Marta Loachman, Senator Fenberg, and Carrie Kennedy. Next month, we'll have Shad Merritt, the chair of the Colorado Democrats, to talk about what's going on statewide, in particular CD3 and CD8. And I will make note that the board has made a decision to send $750 to Yadira Caraveo's campaign. And also we will have Danny Newsom, who will be here in particular about a constitutional amendment. This is one we like. This is for the reproductive health care for all, to make sure that abortion care and any other reproductive health care is enshrined and protected for all. Please remember to register early by Monday so we can get a proper head count on food and wine so you don't go hungry. Make sure to check in at the table at the end if you need to register or renew your membership or whatever by shirt. And then lastly, just exit the ballroom as quickly as you can so we can get cleaned up and let the dancers come. And thank you and see you next month.